the beautiful Black Hills, home to majestic rock formations and scorching American heat. More importantly, however, the Black Hills were home to gold. The year is 1874, and the American government finds itself in a tight diplomatic situation with a large amount of upset Lakota and Cheyenne Indians on their western frontier. After the bloodiest war in American history a decade earlier, the United States is heavily burdened by war debts and other expenditures that have severely weakened the nation's economy. A gold rush would provide a much-needed jump-start for the economy because the government would surely profit from the purchasing of land on the frontier and digging tools. The Custer expedition of 1874 to the Black Hills proved the existence of gold at French Creek, and it didn't take long for this news to become national. Even before the expedition, the government had trouble protecting an influx of miners and frontier settlers to the Black Hills. The territory lay on the Great Sioux Reservation, as defined by the Treaty of Fort Laramie of 1868. This provided hunting grounds and ensured civilization to all the tribes of the Sioux Nation and concluded Red Cloud's War of 1866 to 1868. After staunchly rejecting any United States offers to buy the land, the Colonel John E. Smith concluded, "Nothing short of their annihilation will get it from them." It appeared that war was the only option. In a campaign during the summer of 1876, Custer and his 7th Cavalry are sent forth from the main Dakota column to scout the Little Bighorn River Valley. Soon, a desperate and unexpected battle would begin. Military officers Frederick Benteen and Marcus Reno have their holdup surrounding a strategic hill and are cut off from General Custer's forces. The men desperately dig themselves in an attempt to repel wave after wave of fatal native offenses. Little did they know that their ranking officer Custer and the rest of their column had just been completely slaughtered in one of the most upsetting and decisive defeats in American military history. The Battle of the Little Bighorn would later be known as Custer's last stand. In reality, this would be the last stand of the American Indian, who would never again benefit from such widespread unity and victory. This battle would truly seal the fate of United States settlement in the West.
The year is 1876, and it is a scorching summer in South Dakota. The country is celebrating its 100th birthday. Meanwhile, however, the Sioux Nation was laying the groundwork for a massive unified tribe led by one of the greatest native generals of all time, a tribe fit for war. The leader of this worthy foe was a mysterious and powerful Sitting Bull. Leader of the Lakota, Sitting Bull lacked the military skill as a typical war chief. In this regard, the mighty Crazy Horse was crowned as general. One of the most skilled warriors of the Sioux tribe, the almost mythical Crazy Horse was never photographed and remains somewhat an enigma to modern historians. On the side of the United States was the fair General Custer, along with Reno and Lieutenant Benteen leading the mule train. The battle itself took place on June 25th, a scorching hot summer day, deep in the Black Hills of Montana, along the Little Bighorn River. There was much contention between experts on what maneuver Custer was trying to pull on the assault of the camp, seeing as there were no reliable survivors of Custer's troops. It is believed by some that he was attempting a quite routine move by trapping the flanks of the native army between two lines of cavalry formed by Custer and Reno, and that he was just caught off guard by the vast size of the tribe. The other theory is that he may have been attempting a far more risky plan, capturing the women and children of the tribe and holding them hostage against Sitting Bull's troops. Either way, the plan terribly failed, leaving General Reno's troops exposed and outnumbered. Reno pulled his men into a defensive position at the top of a nearby hill between two rocks and fended off wave after wave of native strikes against his pained soldiers. Reno's lines broke when he called, "Follow me if you wish to survive." With this, he charged off into the woods, losing nearly half of his men, only to ride to a hill further away, where he created new lines. The men were ordered to dig in, creating breastwork out of disassembled wagons and carcasses of expired horses. They fought without food, water, or reinforcements. Not only this, but they also suffered under incompetent and divided leadership. General Reno was drunk throughout most of the fighting, and Benteen's men suffered far greater casualties due to his late orders to dig in. Benteen was so tired that at the height of the fighting, with natives feet away from their lines, Benteen was seen taking a nap behind the lines. The thirst was so excruciating that one soldier, Private Thompson, went on a suicide mission alone to obtain water from the nearby Bighorn River. He was shot non-fatally 5 times before returning with water, at which point he was held up by one of his fellow soldiers at gunpoint for the water. The siege was broken after 2 days of brutal fighting. The soldiers were allowed to leave, escaping down the Bighorn River on their supply ship known as the Far West.
The battlefield lay littered with bodies. No survivors from Custer's party were found, minus the band who did not witness the battle. They were overwhelmed by superior numbers and were all slaughtered. The precise particulars of that horrible catastrophe will never be known. There are no survivors, stated the New York Times editorial after the battle on July 7, 1876. Fate willed otherwise. Many a gallant young life went out in blood on the banks of the memorial Little Bighorn, recounted the National Republican on July 25th of that year. America was dealt a heavy blow, as was told by these newspapers. The body of what was assumed to be Custer was found surrounded by wasted cartridges and his signature buckskins. The natives have taken the United States by surprise, killing a general, loved by some, hated by others, yet effective nonetheless. Not to mention the 322 other soldiers fallen at the hand of the Great Sioux tribe. Mrs. Custer alone lost all of her sons in this one terrible battle. The natives, however, had different feelings on the battle. This is one of the only major native victories of the 19th century, one that had come primarily due to the rare unification, which was seldom achieved, but powerful when used.
The victory was short-lived, however. Soon after the decisive win, the unified tribe of the Sioux quickly dissipated. The massive numbers of concentrated natives made it difficult for them to settle in any one spot for too long before they overhunted or overused the resources in the area. In addition, the United States government's plan to divide and conquer through reservations often displaced Indian tribes, moving them to lands owned by other tribes, eventually causing conflict. They also quickly lost their leader. Sitting Bull spent a period in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. The growth of fame within their leader led to more deviation amongst the tribes. Some felt that Sitting Bull had abandoned the tribe, whilst others felt that the fame of their leader would lead to more recognition of their plight. Sitting Bull was eventually killed by the native reservation police in the later named Battle in the Dark, and his immediate followers were also killed in the battle. After the close quarters fighting ended, an eyewitness recalls, Sitting Bull was left a shapeless mass. Crazy Horse faced a very similar fate. After the battle, he too adopted the ways of the Westerners, dressing in a typical American fashion and abandoning native religion. The Americans worried, however, that he would slip back into his old ways of pure native traditions. In order to prevent this, upon his return to the Spotted Tail Agency, he was arrested under false charges of treason and conspiracy to murder. In the struggle, he was skewered with a bayonet. The wounds proved fatal. These actions proved to be more devastating, however, than just the defeat of two powerful leaders. This demoralized the entire cause of the natives across the country. This showed natives that there was no home for them in the land of the white man. The Americans would never trust a native, and whatever brief unity had existed was destroyed by the complete lack of trust between the tribes. The natives were essentially powerless to stop the inevitable western expansion and infiltration of their homelands. How smooth must the language of the whites be when they can make right look wrong and wrong look right? This quote describes the age-old problem of the natives. They receive no honesty from the American government, yet clearly, unification leads to only more tension and divisions.
During the Battle of Little Bighorn, the natives had more than one advantage over the Americans. For one, they did have superior firepower. Philbrick states, the American Army in the early 1870s was nothing more than a glorified police force, comprised of immigrants looking for money and a tiny band of professionals that were aging quickly after the Civil War. The soldiers found themselves armed with outdated 1850 cavalry rifles and sabers. Their only modern weapons were the 6-cylinder Colt revolvers, yet they did not nearly have the range of rifles. The native army of Crazy Horse, however, armed themselves with Winchester 6-shots, lever-action, repeating rifles. These could fire much faster at the cost of range, although with the close quarters of much of the battle, range was of no concern. The natives also utilized the power of the bow and arrow that allowed higher arching shots that could strike at American soldiers in the troughs of hills where they could not yet hit natives. Not to mention, also, the sheer difference in numbers between these two armies. Although these served the natives well in the battle, the hidden power of the natives forced the American military to take the Great Sioux War far more seriously. The American military overhauled their forces, training them more efficiently, and building a corps of cold, efficient Indian hunters. The American people screamed for retribution for the killing of Custer, a prized and esteemed Civil War general. All of these factors gave birth to the great American Indian fighter of General Ranald Slidell Mackenzie. The best example of the new American native policy occurred when Mackenzie, aided by 1,000 soldiers and 400 scouts, assaulted a native village in the cover of night, slaughtering nearly everyone. This attack was a direct result of the battle, and was a successful attempt to kill Morning Star, a major factor in the Battle of Little Bighorn and resistance to Western expansion. The newly trained forces also armed themselves with the powerful new guns, utilizing the devastating power of the Gatling gun, a predecessor to the machine gun, the new improved Springfield rifle that had far superior range and accuracy, and the Parrott gun, a powerful yet mobile cannon that the cavalry could easily carry. We were told that they wished merely to pass through our country, to seek for gold in the far west. Yet before the ashes of the council are cold, the Great Father is building his forts among us. His presence here is an insult to the spirits of our ancestors. Are we then to give up their sacred graves to be allowed for corn? States Red Cloud and Oglala remained on the reservation during the Battle of Little Bighorn. The Native Americans stood no chance against the new American forces. Their guns were quickly obsolete, their numbers depleting, and their divisions worse than ever. There was no place for the western tribes, such as the Cheyenne or Sioux, to make a stand.
The Native Americans in the West never made another real attempt to stop the invading Americans after the Sioux War ended. The few Native attempts to resolve their matters in the American politics system were essentially useless as the United States continued its drive westward. The American government would time and time again take advantage of the Native American people, forcing them onto smaller and smaller reservations. If there was any murmur of resistance, it was quickly quelled by the military, which was now extremely deadly and efficient at keeping the frontier. The Native Wars ended with the devastating massacre at Wounded Knee in 1890. Although an energizing win, the Battle of Little Bighorn in the long run was the final nail in the coffin of the American Indian resistance to westward expansion. The battle confirmed that unification of a native nation, while providing excellent short-term benefits, had no chance of lasting long because of the constant political tension between the tribes. It forced the American military to take the new enemy of the natives far more seriously, and ended any real chance of political victory within the United States political system. After the dust of the battle settled, Custer's body lay lifeless, surrounded by spent shells in the bodies of his brothers and fellow officers. His last stand ended in blood death, much like that of the natives. After the war, the natives were required to stay permanently on reservations, tiny spits of land with no benefits. Although the Battle of Little Bighorn may have been a decisive victory, this was the last one of the unified Sioux would enjoy. If we must die, we die defending our rights. There are not Indians in the world to defeat the 7th Cavalry.